I advised my husband to confront his nervousness. After he vanished, he gave me divorce papers. What have overwhelming desire and wrath ever done to a person? I'm having a hard time seeing any advantages to my rudeness and rage in retrospect. Rather, they have destroyed my joy. I'm still coming to terms with the fact that this is what happened as a result of my careless, spontaneous statements. You may be asking what result I'm so bitterly complaining about. It's a little convoluted. But the main thing is that I ultimately received paperwork. Yes, divorce papers that tarnished my most treasured memories I was too naive to see their value. Ian signaled the end of my lovely life. I believe it's too late to make amends at this time. Divorce papers, don't they indicate that the relationship is ended and cannot be repaired? I'm at a loss on what to do. This dark, overpowering emotion has me lost and overwhelmed. And it's killing me. I initially believed he was simply overreacting because I couldn't figure out why he was so furious. However, my eyes snapped open the instant I received the divorce papers, leaving me naked and broken in my broken world. Why was I unable to comprehend him? Why did I let my sensitivity and wrath overcome me? Why was it so difficult to be patient and understanding with him? Instead, I damaged him much more by turning his suffering against him. Autumn is my name. My age is 38. Deacon and I have been married for 8 years. And I have to say that our marriage has not always been easy. Like all newlyweds, we were full of love and hopes for the future when we first got married. However, things started to alter with time. I worked for a company and my husband was a surgeon. Despite his demanding work and busy schedule, Deacon was a pillar of support for our family and a dedicated worker who always tried his hardest to be there for us. Nothing was more important to him than me, and he always made sure to prioritize my sentiments. He was the greatest, but I didn't show him the same affection and concern. Rather, I took advantage of his suffering to inflict further harm, knowing that I couldn't be the same encouraging companion for him has me overcome with guilt. My husband had always been worried about my working, especially while I was pregnant. But I persisted in going on, telling him that my work was my first priority, and that he would understand and value that if he really loved me. He eventually convinced me to take a leave of absence, which he did just in time for the birth of our son, Asher. I couldn't have asked for more at the time. One of the greatest presents we had ever gotten in our marriage was Asher's birth, but we had no idea that it would also be the start of our nightmare, as they say. Age is never a determining factor in an ideal marriage. If that were true, I would have made better choices given my age, and I would still be with Deacon today if I hadn't made the mistakes that eventually got me into this situation. I know it was years ago, but it's difficult to say when exactly things started to fall apart. Unaware that I was being devoured by my professional goals, I had changed as a person. Our company was in the midst of a promotion season and I had gotten so preoccupied with my work that I was unaware that I was ignoring my spouse and child. At the moment, nothing was more important to me than getting the promotion I so much wanted. And I would stop at nothing to get it. Deacon would take care of our toddler, Asher, until the babysitter arrived because I would always go for work extremely early, usually caused him to arrive at work somewhat late. Even though I was tired, I would still be focused on my work when I got home late. I was so focused on my career that I forgot I was a wife and mother in addition to being an employee, but Deacon never voiced any complaints. He made an effort to make our family function even while I was away by being patient and compassionate with me. Deacon first voiced his displeasure after our infant, Asher, was hurt in an accident brought on by his nanny's carelessness. Deacon attempted to help me realize my error by telling me that although my career was vital, I should also find time for him and our child. However, I snapped, reminding him that it was not just my duty but also his to look after Asher. I told him that he shouldn't believe that other people's jobs are unimportant, and that my work is simple. In retrospect, I suppose that experience served as a wake-up call and an opportunity for me to avoid the predicament I find myself in now. However, I misunderstood his words, and now I feel like I'm just paying for my stupid choices. My husband never harbored resentment toward me, and he always tried his hardest to look after me and our child. I wouldn't forget it until that day, which was a watershed in our marriage. My world fell apart on that dreadful day when tragedy struck and doom chose to come and take away our joy in the most tragic and inexplicable way. We lost our beloved, Asher, I can't believe that instead of finding the strength to be strong and repair our marriage, I allowed anger and blame to overwhelm me. My baby Asher was only about 4 years old when we lost him. I snapped at Deacon and held him responsible for everything. I was so distraught that I didn't realize Deacon was also grieving the loss of a child. I never gave his feelings any thought since I was too preoccupied with my own grief. What made me believe I was the only one suffering? Despite the fact that Deacon's loss was equally as heartbreaking as mine, I never allowed him time to mourn. He had also lost a child. But I had only ever cared about myself and had never once paused to think about how he felt. Deacon was meant to pick Asher up from the daycare that day, but something unexpected happened. As terrible as it is to say, he contacted me numerous times, but I couldn't respond since I was too busy celebrating my promotion with my coworkers. I was enjoying myself, not paying attention to Deacon's urgent signals. I didn't see his missed calls and texts until much later when I eventually checked my phone. It came so late, coupled with the heartbreaking news that broke my heart forever. After my team meeting, Deacon called me again to see if I had brought Asher up from daycare. He asked me this, which surprised me because I had always driven Asher to school and returned. I was really embarrassed that I had that thinking. I had raged at him, telling him that was his job and that I had just noticed his message since I was so busy. He got another call and hung up before we had even finished our argument. When I finally called Deacon back, everything in my world fell apart. My life was permanently altered when he informed me that Asher had died in an accident, unnoticed by the daycare staff. My kid Asher had left their care and was struck by a car while chasing a ball. As soon as I heard the news, I passed out. And when I awoke, I was in a hospital with Deacon crying next to me. I leaped from my bed, grabbed Deacon's collar, and insisted that he return our boy to me. I yelled that I needed my child back, regardless of whether he had to give him life or give up his life for mine. Despite Deacon's best efforts to comfort me, I was beyond comfort, and all he could do was cry. I lost it and threw all of my sorrow and rage at him, accusing him of being responsible for Asher's passing. I held him responsible for everything, even going so far as to declare that he was to blame for everything that occurred, and that I would never forgive him. I became aware of my cruelty as I looked back on everything. Maybe I was too scared to believe that my boy was really gone. The idea was simply too much for me to handle, and I didn't want to admit that our child had died and that I was partly to blame. I suppose I simply needed to vent because it was too much for me, and I saw Deacon as a way to do so. In spite of everything, Deacon took in all of my rage and tantrums. He absorbed everything and never placed the blame on me. I suppose that gave me the leverage to accomplish all I did. Because he did his best to stand strong for us, I moved away from Deacon, getting farther away. I became totally consumed by my work and became a workaholic. It might be an understatement to say that I developed a work addiction. Yes, I was addicted, as it was the only way I could get away from my suffering. I no longer cared about anything else. Work was the only thing that mattered in my life, not Deacon, our marriage, or even my health. I was so preoccupied with my work that I didn't realize Deacon was having health issues. Deacon took a year off from work following the death of our kid. I was too preoccupied with my work to bother to find out why. What if I had chosen differently in the past? Would the situation now be different? Could I have prevented the dissolution of my marriage? I lost contact with my husband, and even though he tried to improve our relationship, I was always the issue. I was too busy and often so cold to hang out with him. After that, our relationship remained that way for years, and I was unaware that Deacon was having difficulties on his own. Until one evening, when I got home from work, he was preparing supper as usual. He inadvertently injured his finger with a knife while chopping veggies. He winced in pain, and I watched, unaffected. I then snapped, shouting at him and accusing him of being irresponsible and incapable of doing anything correctly. Then Deacon stood as if he had just seen a ghost, astonished and terrified. He began to perspire and tremble at the sight of his bloodied finger. I tried to talk to him because I was so perplexed, but he wasn't answering. As I approached him, his trembling worsened and I could feel his heart pounding so rapidly. He was perspiring profusely, and before I knew it, he was unconscious. I discovered he suffered an anxiety attack when I hurried him to the hospital right away. The doctor assured me that he was going to be all right because he had been for some time. And this was just another episode. Hearing that a loved one was unwell would make anyone feel horrible, and I left the hospital right away and rushed to work. Once the doctor explained the specifics of his ailment and confirmed that it wasn't fatal or communicable. When I returned home later that day after receiving a call from my supervisor, Deacon was already there. When I questioned him about why he had never disclosed his illness to me, he explained that he didn't want to add to my already hectic schedule and didn't want me to worry. He claimed it was nothing serious and that he would be all right. He must have been so afraid and helpless that I ought to have gathered him in an embrace and consoled him. However, I chose to ignore everything and go to bed, saying I was exhausted, rather than giving him a hug and attempting to cheer him up. Over time, I saw Deacon fight off his anxiety episodes whenever they occurred. It usually happened while our family was visiting or when he got home from work. Eventually, I would become and yell at him, telling him to confront his concerns and move on rather than offering him support. I would even go so far as to say that he wasn't improving because he was ignoring his issue. I would always say yes when Deacon asked me to go with him to see his therapist, but then I would abruptly change my mind. I told him that I didn't think therapy was worthwhile and that it was a waste of time. When he brought it up again, I would argue that I had more significant and better things to do at work. Deacon never voiced any complaints, so 2 weeks ago, I was also requested to bring my spouse along. Everything appeared to be going smoothly when we got there, exactly as I needed it to be, until my supervisor came over. In addition to expressing gratitude to my husband and me, he acknowledged that he had been anticipating that moment. He said that he had always wished to meet Deacon and me jointly to offer his condolences for our child's passing. Deacon's nervousness arrived just as he was finishing his sentence. Due to Deacon's anxiety episode, the partygoers were startled, and the entire group started to worry, which ruined the occasion and interrupted everyone's happiness. I excused us both and led Deacon outside once he had taken his prescription and had finally composed himself. I let loose all 7 levels of hell on him because I simply could not contain myself any longer. I yelled at Deacon and told him how embarrassed I was by the drama he had shown a little while before in front of everyone. I continued, describing him as a weak and pitiful individual who was an embarrassment to me. Shock, incredulity, and rage were visible on Deacon's face. Even though I could tell how disappointed he was, I continued. I persisted in verbally attacking him, telling him to face his anxiety rather than allowing it to rule his life. I inquired as to if he felt attending therapy sessions would help him get well. If he did, he was incredibly gullible and ignorant to even entertain the possibility. He wasn't working hard enough, so he needs to get tougher. Deacon went crazy. He lost his temper, smashed his phone to the floor, and began screaming as loudly as he could. He expressed his sincere and heartfelt regret for being weak, as I had mentioned, and for being unable to help me other than to cause me pain. He walked away like a lightning bolt after apologizing for everything. That was the last time I saw him before he vanished. When I got home from the party that evening, Deacon wasn't there. He never returned home. Deacon's divorce papers were staring me in the eyes. When I opened the delivery I received on Sunday morning, I didn't know how to respond because I was so surprised and unable to speak. When did our relationship become so strained? That day, as I stared at the divorce documents in my hands, I experienced a strong wave of terror and thought I would have a panic attack. Deacon never showed up, despite my waiting for him. He seems to have completely disappeared or fallen from the face of the planet. I'm at a loss for what else to do. I'm terrified that I might lose my spouse as well, as I've already lost a child. I suppose I hurt him, even though I never meant to. I'm not sure what to do at this point. But more significantly, I'm not how I'll set things right. I have no one to talk to or anywhere else to go, but I want my hubby back. I was forced to come out here and let everything out. I've done that to myself a million times already. So I don't care if you criticize or blame me right now. I need a solution. I want to make everything right. I've discovered the hard way that certain errors are irreversible. If you haven't lived that person's life or gone through a similar amount of hardship, you can't really relate to or feel their agony. I can never truly comprehend the depth of Deacon's suffering and the amount of time he spent with me. At that very moment, I was obviously unaware of his difficulties. These days, I've come to realize what a demon I was by looking back into his world. I was simply too busy and self-centered to realize that my husband was in pain. Instead, I proceeded to cause additional stings to his already frail heart by inflicting fresh wounds on his barely healed ones. The thought of the suffering and torment he must have been going through while he was with me is weighing me down. I accept the fact that I am such an undeserving and selfish person. I'm at a loss on how else to make up for everything. After Deacon vanished a month ago, I was left with divorce papers. I was mistaken to believe that he was only upset and would return home. Once things between us had calmed down 3 days ago, his therapist came to see me, and ever since I've been crying uncontrollably. Deacon had missed his treatment sessions, which was very unusual for him, so she came to see how he was doing. She admitted that she had been wanting to talk to me for some time, but I had been really busy, and she was really happy to finally meet me. Deacon eventually told me he would fight and get better on his own, so he stopped bothering me. She told me she had a lot to say, and I have to admit that she just revealed enough to make me feel guilty. Right now, there's nothing else I can do to make up for what she spilled out. The comments of the therapist struck me like a ton of bricks. Shortly after the death of our child, Deacon had begun to exhibit symptoms of his anxiety illness. I felt as though my nose had flattened on my face, obstructing my nostrils, and I was no longer able to breathe after hearing her say that. Just 3 months ago, I learned that my spouse had been struggling with anxiety episodes for over 3 years. I was unable to comprehend the realization. Feeling as though I had been punched in the gut, I was how to respond. According to the therapist, Deacon felt guilty for our marriage's breakdown and held himself accountable for the death of our child, Asher. Deacon's worry was sparked by his greatest fear, which was that I would leave him behind, especially after Asher died. According to the therapist, she had repeatedly urged Deacon to bring me along to his therapy appointments, but he consistently declined and came by himself, saying he didn't want to bother me about his illness. He thought I was the only one he could rely on, and if I found out about his difficulties, he would appear weak to me in this circumstance, and I might not be able to handle everything. He made the decision to keep his therapy private because he didn't want to burden me or overwhelm me with his struggles. The therapist's account of his comments struck a deep chord with me. The therapist continued by saying that she was overjoyed the day she found out about his illness. She expressed her happiness and her belief that I would support him and make his recovery easier. To her utmost dismay, however, he kept making up reasons why I couldn't be there every time he came for treatment until she ultimately stopped asking out of concern that she could put him under more stress, which would hinder his recuperation. She told me how much Deacon loved me and how guilty he was for not being able to bring our child back. That notion left him feeling powerless and unworthy. The doctor continued by saying that one of the things that caused anxiety attacks was all those bad thoughts. In Deacon's case, my husband would have improved with time if I had offered him even the smallest amount of assistance. As the therapist talked, I experienced a surge of shame when she asked whether I knew where Deacon was. I simply lost all memory and started sobbing and wailing. Although I couldn't see the knife, I could feel as though I was being stabbed. I kept getting cuts and digs, and the only thing I could do was cry because the pain was going all the way through my body and into my spirit. I informed the doctor that I only got divorce papers from Deacon and that I had no idea where he had gone after our last argument. After hearing everything, I was positive it was done, but I had refused to sign them, waiting for him to arrive. I had no right to keep him around at all. I was a useless person who was powerless to help him during all the difficult times, and I was never there for him when he needed me, even though I was the primary cause of his suffering. I can't believe I called myself his wife. I was crying and blaming myself because I was the cause of his illness with the way things were going. If he had stayed with me, his condition would have never improved, and I would only continue to hurt him, the doctor said, adding that she really couldn't blame him for going missing and deciding to get a divorce as a last choice. As if her statements weren't heartbreaking enough, she continued by revealing that Deacon was terrified to even consider having another child. After learning that anxiety problems might be inherited, he was terrified of seeing his child suffer. He asserted that he didn't want that to happen, and that it would simply make things more difficult for me. My heart ached even more when I realized why my sexual life with Deacon had abruptly stopped. I was everything to my husband, the doctor said in closing. But it's just so sad he was so unlucky. I can still hear the therapist's final words, to have me as a wife. I'm on the verge of going insane because of her statement. I feel like I'm going to go crazy because I'm so overcome with grief. The work that I once believed to be of the utmost importance now seems pointless. I simply lay in bed at home sobbing and hoping that a miracle would occur so I could see Deacon once more. However, I feel unworthy of such a chance and want it. Signing the divorce papers and sending them to our family lawyer made me feel terrible. I don't even deserve to be referred to as his wife. And I feel terrible about failing Deacon as his wife since I know I couldn't do anything for him. When he most needed me, I was never there for him. Now that our house is vacant, I'm stuck there wondering, where did it all go wrong? How did it all come to this? Is there anything that can be changed? I just want a chance to make things right for Deacon, even if I can't alter anything. I desire things could be different for Deacon, even though I know I don't deserve happiness. Nothing any of you have said on this platform has helped me, and I am truly struggling. It has only consisted of harsh remarks and insults, so I'm going to take a break. This account is being deleted because I am unable to handle everything. My tormentors, sorrow, and emptiness plague me every moment of every day. I'm in danger of becoming insane, but who am I to blame? I acknowledge that I made a mistake and destroyed not only my life but also, regrettably, my husband's, though I know I don't deserve it. I hope I could apologize to Deacon for everything and, if I can, gain his forgiveness. I'm at a loss and don't know how to proceed. I would sacrifice everything, even my life, to get a second chance if such a thing ever existed. I hope Deacon is content wherever he is and forgets about someone as nasty as myself. Farewell.